Welcome back to the Minecraft Book Club, the series where I play Minecraft while talking about books. And today we're going to continue talking about Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger, specifically chapters 7, 8, and 9. And if you'll notice, the terrain looks a little different compared to last episode. You'll notice all these cobblestone blocks and hay bales all over the place. And I know in a previous episode we planned out the entire city, but because I was talking about a book the entire time, I was not really concentrating on actually planning the city. So I went over everything off camera and decided to fix a bunch of the stuff up, especially because we were missing a bunch of Western themed buildings. Like we did not have a jail or a sheriff or a bank. So I went through and added those, and I removed a lot, like a shepherd or the toolsmith, because that's basically the blacksmith that we have over there. So I combined a bunch of the buildings, removed a bunch of the buildings, and marked them all out. So we have these hay bales to signify buildings or structures. Like this line of hay bales right here is going to be the train tracks that we're going to put in eventually. And then all these cobblestone blocks are basically here to signify roads. So the one I'm going down right now is going to be Main Street eventually, or First Street. I don't know which we're going to do yet. But I also went through and added some side roads for our other buildings, especially this line of buildings that we've been working on. But today, it should be pretty obvious what we're doing because you read the video title. But today we're going to be working on this Hunter's Guild, which is going to be a utility building for us, mostly because it's just a bunch of villager blocks that are going to be in here. We're going to have things like the weaponsmith and the fisherman and I think the cartographer in here today. Of course, if you know me, we're not doing any interiors today because that will be a fun thing to do all in one episode. That'll be a fun episode. You can trust me on that. But I figured we'll go ahead and get this started and get it out of the way. So let us begin with the summary of the book segment for today's episode. Last we left off, Holden was just beaten up by Stradlater after he initiated a fight himself. So we're going to pick up with Holden all beat up and sort of bloody, and he goes back to his room and heads straight for Ackley's room. So Ackley's actually in bed at the time, but he wakes up to see Holden all bloodied, and he asks Holden like, "Hey, yo, what happened?" At first, we gotta love Holden. Holden lies to Ackley. And he says, "Oh, I was just defending your honor in front of Stradlater." And Ackley's like, "Really?" And then Holden's like, "Nah, bro." Holden is really just extremely distraught over the whole Jane incident with Stradlater. And this somehow disturbs him or upsets him so much that he wakes Ackley up again just to ask what the rules are for joining a monastery, which I know is a crazy jump. I think he tries striking up more conversations with Ackley, but Ackley kind of just falls asleep. So then Holden decides, you know what, I'm just going to head back home tonight. We're going back to New York City. I can't deal with this anymore. And as he is leaving the dorm with all of his stuff packed up, he starts to cry a little in the hallway. But then he goes back into the hallway and screams for everyone to sleep tight. Now, before he gets back on the train to go to New York City, he grabs some snow and washes off his blood. On the train, the car is entirely empty, but some 40-year-old woman decides to come and sit next to Holden. This lady says that her son goes to Pensy Prep, and Holden recognizes the name and knows the guy is a total, phony, and Holden actually really dislikes the kid. However, despite this, Holden decides to kind of just play up the guy. He tells this kid's mom that the guy's a golden student and everyone wanted him to be class president, but he was so humble and declined the position. And this mom is just super happy to hear all of this information. She asks Holden for his name and he gives the name of the janitor, and she invites him over to Thanksgiving, but Holden's like, sorry, I'm gonna be in South America when that happens, so I'll be missing that. Holden gets back to New York, arriving in Penn Station. And he decides to spend a lot of time in a phone booth thinking about people to call, but he ends up calling nobody. He takes a cab to go home, and halfway there he realizes, oh shoot, I'm gonna have to explain to my parents why I'm home early, because I haven't told them that I got kicked out of Pensy Prep. So he tells the cab driver, dude, I gotta go somewhere else. So the cab driver takes him back downtown. And during the drive, Holden decides to ask the cab driver what happens to the ducks when the lakes freeze over. And the cab driver kind of just says, like, what kind of joke is this? And that's the end of that conversation. I actually hate this roof. I forgot I was doing Western stuff. Whoopsies. The cab driver takes Holden all the way to the Edmond Hotel. He gets a room and everything, and decides to snoop on the people on the other side of the hotel. Across the hotel and the windows of the other rooms, he sees an old man cross-dressing, and he also sees a couple squirting liquid in each other's mouths, likely some sort of cocktail. And as he's critiquing everything these people are doing, he talks about how all these acts are really fun in the moment, but you always feel crummy the next day. This segment closes with Holden calling up some girl. He got her phone number from some random guy in a party that basically told him the girl's practically a prostitute. He calls her up to go get some cocktails, but she complains that it's a little late in the night and she's tired and wants to go to sleep. So then Holden gives up, and yeah, that's how the chapter closes. I am struggling with this roof, man. I have no clue what I'm doing. I don't think I like this little corner right here. I believe our best bet is just to make this a flat building with this little facade on the front here. That's definitely a lot easier to work with, although I might bring it to the front. I think we'll give it a 1-block indent, and we'll see how that looks. Yeah, that sort of works a bit better. I'm not really liking the colors too much, but we'll be fixing that in a second. And as we fix that up, I'd like to share some thoughts on the segment of the book. So firstly, I'd just like to talk about Holden's obsession with Jane for a second. Holden has basically been thinking of Jane non-stop, and it's definitely taking over his life a little bit. I forgot to mention it in the summary, but Holden considers calling Jane twice in just these 3 chapters. Once in the phone book at Penn Station, and also when he's just sitting by himself in that hotel room before he calls the borderline prostitute lady. He's always thinking about Jane. I haven't read this book in a long time, but I think this continues throughout the entire book. He's just obsessed with Jane, but he also does nothing about it. I honestly don't understand why he keeps thinking about Jane, but then not calling her. Like, she would be one of the easiest people for him to call, and there wouldn't be any downside to it. Holden clearly cares about the girl, so I don't see why, just shooting your shot is such a bad idea for him. I wonder if it's just because he's young, and that it's with age that we understand that most of the opportunities you don't try for never really happen, because you don't try for them. So I just think he should try a little more when it comes to Jane. Like, the kid should just get on with it. There's no point in just sitting around moping over Jane. Constantly worrying about Jane like he is, but doing nothing about it, just worsens your situation by a ton. Holden just needs to rip off the band-aid and get it over with. Either he's going to be with Jane or he's not, and it's better to just find out the answer so you don't have to spend most of your life worrying about it. The second thing I want to talk about is the fact that Holden is constantly lying throughout the book. I say throughout the book, we're only like 9 chapters in so far, so it's only a pattern that I'm recognizing right now. But still, he does it so much that it is extremely noticeable. For instance, he had no reason telling the lies to that one kid's mom. Like, he hated the kid. I don't get why he's trying... Whoa. I don't get why he's trying to preserve that guy's, character, He lies to Ackley. He lies to random people on the train. He's just lying to everyone. And although this is just a pattern that I'm finding right now, we'll see if it develops into something more important as we read the book. And that kind of ties into my next point here, which is about Holden's obsession with the childlike innocence of people. I remember talking about something like this in my English class when we were reading the book. Something about Holden being obsessed with preserving the innocence of kids. So that could be a reasoning for his lying all the time, is that he's trying to preserve the image of this kid being innocent in the mom's mind. And this might also be why Holden is so distraught over Jane's treatment under Stradlater, which we know nothing about. He's just speculating entirely. But at the same time, there's this hypocrite issue again, where as Holden's talking about preserving people and making sure they're innocent, I know he hasn't said that directly, but it's implied, I guess. is what my English teacher would say. But while he's trying to preserve this innocence of children, or complaining about preserving the innocence of these children, he's simultaneously trying to get hookups with these random girls that he's heard of from parties. So it seems like although he wants to preserve everyone as a youth, he's also trying to grow himself. And that completely contradicts some of his beliefs there. Although I will say that's entirely based on everything my English teacher said back in high school. I still haven't seen any evidence that Holden wants to preserve people in their childlike form. I'm just remembering things that my English teacher said and trying to put little pieces of evidence that fit to that description of Holden. But as soon as we come across something in the book that's very blatant or symbolic about Holden wanting to preserve people's innocence as children, I'm just going to say that I don't see it so far. But when that happens, we'll point it out. I guess this idea is a very good idea when it comes to the idea of how many times you can say idea in a sentence. But when it comes to the idea of growing up and leaving childhood to join adulthood, so Holden might want to continue being a kid, preserving that childlike innocence, but at the same time, you have to grow up at some point. And I think the point of this book is showing someone going through that odd stage of life, where as much as you want to protect the youth from everything that's bad and phony about the future, you also want to grow up because there's so many more liberties to being an adult. So Holden may want to protect people and make them be kids forever and just preserve their childlike innocence, but at the same time, all the while he himself doesn't want to focus in school or do anything that, is difficult. He wants to be a little kid all the time and play. But part of growing up is realizing that you have responsibility, and while you might not enjoy those responsibilities, they are a necessity for living. So because this is a coming-of-age story, that might actually be what's going on with Holden, is that he's trying to learn how to be an adult. And that's something everyone has to go through, and we're just watching Holden do it. So I might be a bit overly critical with his hypocrisies, because everyone when they're growing up is a hypocrite. I've had several friends, swear that they were never going to drink alcohol, but knowing them as adults, I've had beers with them, right? And that is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a part of growing up, is realizing that some things are, either socially impossible, or you just have to grow up and deal with some things, or sometimes kids can be a little too optimistic with life, which is a good thing. That might be, why Holden wants to preserve these kids, is because they're always optimistic and happy, and he's realizing that life can be phony and miserable, so that could be an aspect to it for sure. Next thing, why in the world does he keep asking people where the ducks go? Like, oh, when the lake freezes, where do the ducks go? Man, why is it this difficult to think about? And why does he care so much? Everyone just kind of asks, like, what in the world are you asking? Which is kind of sad, Just answer the question, where do the ducks go? But why does he care so much where the ducks go? I don't get it. And lastly, I sort of touched on this already, but Holden's pretty hypocritical in this book, right? He's going and critiquing everything that the other people in the hotel are doing, but then at the same time, he tries to partake in the activities himself. He's well aware that you feel crummy after the activities, he mentioned that, but then he still tries and calls this, prostitute lady up just to, partake. I don't get it. If you know it's bad, and you partake, and you're critiquing everyone else for partaking, I don't get it. This book is killing me. I do not like reading this book. There's nothing to talk about at all. We're already done with the segment. I have to fill 8 more minutes of content up. There's nothing to talk about this book. English teachers are forcing this book down your throat for no reason. I do not understand. It's a lot more fun to read compared to other books you've read in your English class probably, but I don't get why this book is so popular. It reads nicely, it's a fun story, but I don't get why everyone has to read it. There's genuinely nothing to talk about this book unless you have an English degree, which I think an English degree is straight up a pyramid scheme, because all English teachers do are make books be symbolic, even though the authors usually don't intend to make books symbolic. And then kids get interested in learning about this symbolism, so they go to college or whatever to go get English degrees to become English teachers, because what else are you going to do with an English degree, right? If you want to write stuff as a job and not an art, you get a communications degree. So genuinely, why in the world are we forcing this book down everyone's throat? I do not get it. I was a fan of this book, right? I enjoyed this book. I just don't understand why, everyone has to read it. It's pointless for everyone to read this book. The other two books we read for this series, 1984 and that Christian self-help book, those have been perfectly fine books. I've enjoyed them. There's stuff to talk about. I am struggling with this book. I am actually struggling. I genuinely feel like I need an English degree to dissect this book to make it interesting at all. There are no morals to this book that I can find so far. There's none that I remember from my English class. It's a fine book, but I don't get why everyone has to read it. I think books like this being taught in high school is part of the reason that so many kids hate reading books, because this book just genuinely sucks if you're not interested in Holden. What is this guy doing? Having to write annotations about symbolism in this book? I don't even think I could do that now as an adult. But I had to do it as a high schooler, because, I don't know. I genuinely don't know why I had to do that. Anyway, I'll have several more episodes to rant about this book. Maybe I fill in the video length with just ranting about Catcher in the Rye. We'll see. I might do that. But for next episode, read up to chapter 12, up to and including chapter 12. Right? 10, 11, 12. Yeah, that's correct. But yeah, here we go. I've changed my mind. This isn't a hunter's guild. This is a hunter's supply. So this is where you will go and get your hunter supplies. And I know it's kind of this corner building right now. We're going to put a building over here. Maybe that's what we do for the rest of the episode. I'm just going to walk through the entire city. Let's do that. And I'm sorry for not making that last part a little more energetic. I am just genuinely tired of talking about this book. I'm also tired because this is a long video recording. I know it seems like I just built this house, but it has taken forever to film this video. Anyway, let's go through and walk through the little plan I made off camera. We'll start here over on the southern end of town. We've got this water cave thing, and eventually I'll expand that over and we'll make this kind of the edge of town. So this will be where travelers walk into the town, right? There's going to be a road here. You can visit the blacksmith. Wow, fantastic. Over here, we have a lumber yard. Wow, fantastic. He's really close to, the lumber, so good for him, right? Got a mason right here for all your clay goods. And then walking this way, this one's going to be attached to this building right here. This is the gunsmith, which is going to be our Fletcher, mostly because Wild West towns would not use bow and arrows, I don't think. So, yeah, we're going to build that soon because we'll be needing it. Here is our hunter supply. And then on the right here, we have our horse stable, so you can come and drop off your horse. And then right here, these hay bales are, of course, the train track. I'm going to make this a big arched thing, and we'll have the railroad on top of it. We'll have to make a train station that goes pretty high up. But we have this little side road, and that's going to bring us to the tannery, which is going to be a building right there. And then this is train station south. We have train station north right across there. I'm thinking of just making a big building that'll be the train station, and the rail will go in there. So working back down this road over back to Main Street, we'll be able to walk through this because this will be a giant arched thing. So here we're going to have the general store, and then up here we're going to have the drugstore, and then, of course, the train station I was just talking about. And on the right side here, we're going to have a telegraph or post office. I'm thinking post office because the telegraph should technically be in the train station. And that's because when the railroad lines were being constructed across, say, the United States, the companies were required to put in telegraph lines as well. So the telegraph would be next to the rail. So it should technically be in the office, or the train station, not the office. So this is probably just going to be a post office. Gonna put the bank right here. I think that'll be a cool spot for a bank right next to our steel mill, which we're gonna be completing within this book, right? I'm pretty sure while we read Catcher in the Rye, we'll be completing the steel mill. Steel mill. And across from the steel mill over here, I believe, yep, we have the church. Church is going right here. And then this building, I think we're gonna be constructing next episode. This is going to be a saloon, and we're going to have the brewery be right here on this end, and then this side's going to be the saloon. But on the other side of the saloon, we're going to have the sheriff, just so he can walk over into the saloon and deal with the rowdy people. He's also pretty close to the bank, which is over there, so that's a good spot for the sheriff. And the jail right there. You don't have to travel very far from the saloon to go to jail. So right here, we're going to have apartment C. Apartment C? Well, I started labeling over there, and I came around. So this was just the third one. So this is apartment building C. So apartment C is going to be on this corner, and you can take this road down over towards the buildings we have been building for the last few episodes. I'm going to put a barber right there. We're going to make apartment B and, of course, apartment A right there. And to finish off the buildings here that I have planned, we're going to put a giant water tower. I think that'll be cool. It'll balance out the right and the left side with the tall steel mill and now the water tower. And then the last two things I have planned is this is going to kind of be a public square or garden, but we're going to have a statue right in the middle. And then if you continue on this way, we're going to have the town hall. And this will be a giant build as well. That's most of the plans for the city. Of course, we'll have to do some minor detailing like trees and roads and light. Because the torches on the ground, very cheap, very effective, not very pretty. But outside of the town, I think we have a couple things I want to do. I want to try making this waterfall look pretty. We're going to make it come up from up there and fall down. So that'll be cool. And I think right there, right up here, is going to be a great spot for a castle.
Did you say castle?
Yeah, I said castle. We're going to put a castle there. The main reason I want to make a castle is this is kind of my first village I've ever built. And I also want to build castles more in the future. So I want to build a castle once just to get a hang of the idea. And that way we'll also have a castle to look back upon once we've built other castles and we can see how much we've improved. So we just have 6 or 7 more episodes of Catcher in the Rye, and then we can switch to a different book. I honestly have no clue what book we're going to read next, but it's not going to be a little high school book like this again. And sorry if it sounds like I hate this book, I don't. It's just been a really bad choice for this series because I have nothing to talk about. That's the whole point of the series, is me building and talking about books and the cool stories and the cool ideas from them. However, Catcher in the Rye is a book to critique Holden on, and I don't want to spend these 10 episodes critiquing Holden, because that's really boring, because Holden is fake. But we'll push through. I don't ever want to not finish a book. We're going to leave no page unturned. So anyway, thank you all for watching this hopefully interesting episode of Minecraft Book Club. Next episode, chapters 10, 11, and 12, and I will see you there.